Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Unpack That with Redefined Wellness. It's a very cool 7 degrees outside here in Edmonton. Welcome to our folks on Facebook, on my radio, 580 AM, and all around that have tuned in with us this morning. Of course, I'm Alric here with the one and only fire starter Latoya Reed, and a very special guest this morning in the studio with me. Latoya, how are you this morning?
You didn't tell the guest name, Alric.
We are going to be introducing her.
I'm trying, folks. I'm over here, like, we have a new studio. The camera is right in my face. I don't like that, so I'm trying to deflect any extra attention. I need therapy, right? I need therapist. But I'm glad to be here this morning. Trust me, for those who are listening and think that I sound sick, I promise you I'm not as sick as I sound. I am doing a lot better. Last week was rough.
Was a rough week.
But here I am. I made it back to you guys. So I'm happy to be here. And I'm also happy to have our special guest. I'm going to pass it back to you so you can do your job, Mr. Alric.
Thank you, of course. And so we have with us this morning the one and only Sherani Sivakumar with us. And as usual, we will allow our guest to introduce herself because we believe that it's important for someone or for guests to be able to speak of themselves and boast of whatever it is that they want to boast of. Of course, and we also have the shout out that we normally do. So first, I want you to introduce yourself to our audience, to Facebook land, to Radio land, and then we'll ask you to give a shout out to whoever it is that you want to shout out this morning. Sherani.
Okay, I don't know how much boasting there will be, but this is good practice for myself. Hi, folks. My name is Sherani Sivakumar. I use she, her pronouns. I am a wife. I am a friend. I am a daughter. I like to introduce myself with the roles that I have. I guess another important role I have, too, is I'm a registered provisional psychologist, which is always a mouthful.
Let's sound the horn for all
But I don't really like to foreground that piece. I think I hold other roles that are really more important and that I want to speak to more so in terms of coming forward from like lived experience of like grief and trauma and whatnot. So yeah, I am in the mental health field, and but that's only just one aspect of my identity. So
definitely,
I love that.
Yeah. In terms of a shout out, I'll give a shout out to my husband Dale, who is currently sleeping right now.
Oh yeah, let's go.
But yeah, he will be watching this later on. So.
And what the folks don't know, so Dale may be sleeping, but he did his task from last night. So he left all the sticky notes, filled up the car with gas.
Yes.
And we love you for that, Dale. So shout out to you for the proactive pieces.
For the preparation.
The emotional support.
Dale and anybody else can always watch the rerun on Facebook or our YouTube channel. Let's unpack that. So,
See, it's very important to highlight because we're here at 7 a.m. in the morning. In order to be on the show, we have to be here before 7 a.m. And of course, with the weather changing, because it's now getting very cool outside, right? We want to thank you for taking the time out to actually be in studio with us. As Latoya said, it's a pretty new space, and so we're kind of getting used to the vibe in this space. Yeah. But thank you for coming on. And so today we're going to be speaking of a few things, right, including grief, because recently you mentioned to us, right, that you have been through a process where you've and we want to say condolences to you. You've lost your dad, right? And in our practice, we often have clients who come in that are going through the grieving process and are not even aware that they're still going through that process. They think that grief shows up the same way for everyone, and they sometimes question if they're grieving correctly, right? And so we want to start the conversation on that piece where, because you also bring a clinical lens, right, where that's concerned. How did that feel going through that process, understanding what you know from a clinical lens, and making sense of that as you went through that?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm in year 2 of losing my dad suddenly. And so I think it helped widen my experience and lens of like, there's so much more loss than just the losing of my dad. Like there is a loss of like culture, a loss of like identity. And I think I felt these things previously before losing him because of like being in that in-between world of being like a daughter of immigrants. But it was magnified after losing him. And I think because he was the bridge between me and my like extended family, and like served that role of like, okay, like he can speak more of the language, I can't speak the language. And there are ways that like I just noticed how I also like lost a sense of safety in the world, which I think that's very, I don't know, maybe a common theme when like parent loss is like you lose this person that you've like learned to live with your entire life. And so that can feel really like untethering. And I think I can notice that for some clients too who've experienced parent loss or anything like that. But it's just all these other, I think from a clinical lens, what we say is secondary losses, but these losses that still really just matter to folks.
Yeah. I want to break it down for the folks out there who are listening, because I don't want them to get biased and think, oh, they're clinicians in the room, so they're all going to use this language.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that you spoke about the multiple layers of grief and the bridging need or the bridging loss that came with the loss of your dad. So tell me about who you are, that relationship with your dad as well, so that we can get an understanding.
A little bit of the background.
Because lots of us, or folks die, or some persons or some parent dies, and we don't have that attachment to them. So it doesn't feel too much of the same grief and loss that you're describing. So what was that relationship with your dad like?
Yeah. So my dad raised me on his own since I was 3 years old. So it was a single parent dynamic. I am also the only child. So I think that also adds a very complex
that's another layer.
Because I don't have like siblings to like feel in this loss with me. In terms of the attachment, like I think like, we were very close. He was a chef at one point, but then decided to open up his own business in more of like the building maintenance janitorial service, because it allowed him to be more of a single like parent dad and like work the hours that he wanted and whatnot. And so like there was a lot of sacrifices that needed to be made, and I think a lot of sacrifices that come with being a single parent too, and like needing to like survive in the world. So like I think while there was a father-daughter relationship, there was also a business partner relationship too. I learned hard work from a young age and supported him with the technology pieces of the business in my high school young adult years, because he did not know how to email or anything like that. But yeah, I think that just allowed us to have such a very like deep connection in very multiple ways.
That's pretty enlightening, right? For a few reasons. The first is that often when we hear of single parent families, we think about females, right?
Yeah.
A single parent as a female. In this case, your dad was a single parent. So shout out to all single parent dads, and very intentional about the way that he went about things in order to spend more time with you. Even with the technological challenges, he still tried running that business. But also, secondly, as you mentioned, you're an only child. So he had to take care of a daughter as a guy raising you, but also that dynamic for you, not having your mom around, not having any siblings around, that must have been something that for you was a little different. Like, I just want to understand a little bit more about the background. Where was he from? Were you connected to like cousins while growing up?
Here, yeah.
Because that's also pretty important when being raised in a single parent family.
Yeah, good question. Like, so my dad immigrated here, came to Canada in 1982. And so he is the only sibling out of his like 4 siblings that live in Canada.
Okay.
So I have like family dispersed in the world, like most of them in Europe, and that's where my cousins are. And then he's from Jaffna, Sri Lanka. And so, yeah, so he still has a sibling there. So yeah, it was very like alone in this world being here.
Yes.
Yeah, so no, I did not have a lot of immediate or even extended family here.
Wow.
Beyond like my dad, my mom, and her parents. But yeah. So.
Well, I'm quite mindful that we're not in a therapy space. No, there's a reason for that, because I don't want to go too much in the weeds. There are so many things popping up in my mind that I want to ask you, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how much grief work you've done. So, okay, thank God. Thank God. My question for you, because lots of times people don't recognize that grief is a part of trauma. And so as somebody who works with clients from a trauma-focused lens, how did you see your grief showing up when you lost your dad? I heard that you spoke about the many layers of losses that are tied to it. But when did you know, or you said you did grief work, but when did you know that this was the time I need to go and do some work?
Oh, yeah. I have a lot of thoughts to that. I guess, like, so the context of how I lost my dad, I think, suddenly adds a lot of pieces, because I feel like sudden death is so different than, like, maybe a prepared death in some way where you have that anticipatory grieving. Yeah, so I think and this is what's popping up in my brain. It's like there's a difference between pain and suffering. And I mean, initially in that first early grief, I felt a lot of both.
Okay.
And I think me being in the field,
Yeah.
I was like, give me all the therapy. Go see my psychologist. I'm going to do the EAP sessions.
Yeah.
And I just like, if I do all the therapy, this pain and the suffering will go away. And I think that was not very logical. But it just felt like something like tangible that I think I could do.
Wow.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, the grief work came a lot later because I needed to focus on the trauma work of it. And the trauma work of this was like me feeling like I could have done something differently to have prevented this, focusing on like that loss of like safety that I felt in the world, any sort of like flashbacks or like distressing emotions that I had, right? Like I had to work on that before I could work on the deeper layers of this grief of like being witnessed in the many ways that I miss my dad every day. And while therapy was one of those ways, I was also able to access like a grief community support, which I think was really powerful. That was specific to father loss as well too.
Wow.
And so, yeah, there's just a lot of ways that I will continue to do grief work, because I am still early on. But
so lots of folks don't understand that when it comes to grief, there's a sense of powerlessness that comes with it.
Yeah.
Where folks are looking to reclaim power in any way, shape, or form. And I see as a clinician, your way of reclaiming power is, well, I'm going to proactively do these things. Get this done and get this done. But I spoke at in an event last week, and I was talking to folks about trauma therapy, which also includes grief, that we need to be stabilized before we can do any trauma processing, right? And I'm going there because when my mother died, I was 8 months pregnant.
Wow.
It was very, very sudden. I was very hopeful that she was going to be okay. And it's been 13 years. And my body remembers. And I go through the bargaining and I go through the replaying. If I had called, I could have done something. I missed a whole ritual. We always call early in the morning. We always have that conversation. And then I found myself saying, probably if I had done this, this wouldn't have happened. And then one of the ways in which I responded to my grief, like you, not to get therapy at the time we were in Jamaica, nobody gets therapy, hardly, was I took control. I didn't want to sleep.
Yeah.
I took over her funeral planning. I did everything.
Yeah.
I can imagine that you had to do that. But it's the layered pieces of what do I do? How do I function? How do I feel safe in my mind and body and everything that is happening to me so that I can feel centered with my loss, right? So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate the vulnerability. And shout out to all the folks and all my clients out there who have lost a parent, who have had to work through grief with, and that you've probably had to work through grief with, because it is very disheartening. Okay.
Yeah. It's a heavy topic this morning, ladies and gentlemen.
You,
right?
I didn't realize it would be so.
It's hitting pretty hard because, see, is there ever any preparation though for grief, for loss? Because a lot of times, especially because we're human beings and we know that there's going to come a time when we're going to transition this earth, right? And while we all know it, are we ever really fully prepared for that when someone that we love actually passes away?
I don't think so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any preparation. I recently wrote a blog about this where what's her name? Kelly Clarkson.
Yeah.
She was in a nasty divorce with her ex-husband. Very nasty divorce. And I captured it to say, you know, there are times that we are in conflicts with a family member and we'll say, oh, I hate you. I never want to see you again. And da-da-da-da. And, you know, you would think that at the intensity of the conflict, when something detrimental happens or if grief sets in, we're going to be like, oh, happy riddance. Great. But the interesting piece of grief, which I call it quite mysterious, is that the emotions that come with it gets us into this panicked kind of response where we're bargaining, we're doing all of these multiple stages all at once.
You start cycling through the stages.
And so I was, many people were, when I read the comments, many people were like, why would Kelly Clarkson go to her husband, ex-husband, to provide support when it was so horrible or whatever the case is? She gave up her job, her livelihood to go and provide support. I find that what happens when death comes is whatever trivial conflict that we think we had with this person, because of the finality, that there is no chance of relational repair, there is no chance of seeing this person again to know what could happen in regards to improvement. We tend to get to that point where we're grieving what could have been as well.
That's true.
Or grieving generationally. Oh my God, I thought my father would walk me down the aisle. My mother would do this. They would get to meet my grandchild or whatever. And interestingly, I don't know if you've seen this happen before, Sherani, but interestingly, with my kids, they grieve a grandmother they've never known. So when my son was bullied and he was suffering at school and he was going through grief, the kid would ask me, did my grandmother love me?
Oh, wow.
And he's not like those layers. And I'm like, that's interesting. Because he has a grandma who's alive. He knows he's loved by that grandma. He has extended family. But when he was going through those traumatic experiences, he craved for those whom he has no contact with. So That was a blurb. I don't know how we got here. I don't know.
I guess that's how you were preparing.
Yeah.
That's because of course we can never really prepare for a loss of that magnitude, even though we know it. But one of the things that you mentioned a bit earlier as well, Sherani, is that you had this network of support while going through that. And you mentioned your psychologist and a few other things, but you also mentioned the EAP services.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who are actually listening may not even know that that's something that's available to them through work. So talk to me a bit about what is an EAP and how did that help you?
Yeah. So EAP, Employee Assistance Program. I accessed it through my husband's work benefits. Usually it's pretty like time limited, like I think like 5 sessions.
Yeah.
And it's more like kind of just focused on like, I guess like stabilizing a little bit and like just like that like regular like day-to-day coping that they can help you with. And you can like, depending on the service, I don't know how it works for each company, but you can probably try to choose which practitioner you want to work with and book through there. And usually that's how it kind of goes from my understanding.
Yeah, for sure. So as a summary for those of you who are listening on radio and on Facebook, a lot of times through your employer, you have access to benefits that will allow you to see a specialist to help you through particular situations, in this case, grief, right? Loss of a loved one.
It's a crisis response.
A crisis response where you get, through your employer, you do not have to pay out of pocket for it, access to a professional that helps you to stabilize you through situations like these, right?
Yeah.
So now would probably be a good time for you to check in with your employer to see if you have access to these benefits, so that if something like this were to happen to you, then you know that you do have access to that and you can access those benefits.
And it's important to know too that EAP is a crisis response.
It's
so
short term.
It's very short term. Very. If you're looking, very non-relational. So you don't develop those bonding relationships with, and it's like that for a reason, right?
Yes.
Because these clinicians know that they won't be able to see you ongoing.
Long term. And so we're back. Thank you for coming back with us. We're back from the break. And I always say the break is always so interesting because that's where we get to ad-lib, to actually speak through. And that one crept up on us, eh? We're having so much fun. That one crept up on us. But yeah, where were we before the break?
Oh, where were we before the break? We talked about so many things during the break that now we can't keep up.
I think we were talking about EAP being like
very short-term
support.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, thank you for that. There we go, ADHD. But I think it's important for people to recognize that it's intentional, that people don't clinicians don't establish relationships. So if you're looking for somebody long-term, EAP will not be the place to go, just for immediate crisis support and stabilization. And they stabilize you, and then they will tell you about options. But EAP is specifically for folks who have jobs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for
Or
those
their
who
family.
or their families. But those who don't have jobs, there are other options as well. There are crisis support hotlines. There are community organizations that do offer mental health support.
Shout out to all.
Yeah. And there are many private practice that do offer 0 to sliding scales for support. Look at us advertising. Where
it's called
did we get to
educating.
this? Yes.
Educating.
And this is what happens, and this is all the show, and to educate folks about what we know are the options out there, because some cultures don't talk about grief enough,
or mental health.
Yes, or mental health enough. So as we talk about culture, so I used to work in Saskatchewan, and I worked with First Nation Métis services, and almost their culture was very different. As I worked with supporting children through grief, there are some cultures that will say you can't use the word, or you should take away the clothing, or you should clear out the house.
Get it out.
For for the person who is who has the loss, and like you can't say the name if you're creating memorabilia or anything. It cannot. The focus is on the people who are alive, not those who are dead. Then in the Jamaican culture, it's very different, because if you clear out the house too quickly, they're gonna say you killed the person, right? Or you're moving on. They will dictate
Moved on
to
so
you
fast.
that you've moved on too quickly.
Yeah.
And the point is, you're supposed to pine and mope and die in your grief as
Yes.
well. You're
Right.
supposed to show outwardly that you're grieving. How was it to navigate? Well, you may not have a lot of family here that could dictate for you, which may be a good thing or a bad thing. You tell me.
Well, actually, so my dad's younger brother, I call him my chitapa. That's the term in Tamil.
Okay.
So my uncle, he has been a wealth of knowledge in being able to kind of share with me cultural practices that I can do. So in Hindu culture, there is what you do on like a 31st day after someone passed, 1 year passing, and like certain holidays in the year to honor those ancestors. And so that can either be like going to the temple, it can be bringing a priest into the home, which is something that I did in the first year. And even though I was very like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, and nervous about it, because sometimes I feel some like shame in not being so connected to these cultural practices. It felt important for me to do, because I felt like I wanted to honor my dad. And I know even while my dad was not so connected to the culture, like he did these things to honor his parents. And so in some way it made me feel more connected to him. And I know that felt pride in that as well too. And so, yeah. And then there are just, I think, ways that my chitapa also just does practices in Europe where he lives, and like honors those pieces too. So it's just like, there's different ways that I've tried to also reclaim my culture, even though I've felt a big loss in this too.
I like the fact that you said, even though your father wasn't cultural or didn't engage in a lot of those cultural practices,
Yeah.
he did to honor his parents.
Yeah.
And then you're carrying that culture to honor your parent.
Yeah.
So I don't know if children are in your vision for yourself for the future.
Hopefully. One day. One day, yes.
So this is where I'm bringing in Hi Dale.
Dale snoozing.
So is this like this is a conversation that I think any married couple need to talk about, to say, what culture do we pass on, or what practices do we pass on to our children? So how do you envision, you know, that loss that you have, where I don't know enough, but I want to also pass on to my children? How do you and your partner navigate that?
Yeah. I mean, I think we're still figuring it out, right? Like, we are in a biracial marriage. And so when we think about having mixed race children, it's like, how do we set them up in a world that they can feel pride around who they are? And I think that starts from me feeling like I have pride in who I am, and I have a sense of like, what are some of those cultural pieces? And so my mother tongue is Tamil, and we are in the process, have not started yet, but we are trying to figure out a tutor and like try to see if both of us can learn. And I feel really loved that, you know, he's willing to go on that process. With me. And so I think language is one of those ways that we hopefully can maybe connect and pass that on to children, but even just maybe in ways that more I can do so by like cooking and like cultural foods, or if we feel comfortable going to the temple once a year to honor my dad, anything like that. But I think like those little pieces.
Do you cook cultural food?
Not right now. No, no, Dale's actually more of the cook than me. So, but when I go to see my family in Europe, I welcome all the cultural food that I eat there.
Of
so
course.
yes.
Soul food.
Yeah.
Now, I want to pivot back to the piece where, having now experienced this period of grief and still going through it, by the way, does that make you show up any differently for your clients in your clinical practice when they're going through a similar situation? What does that look like in your clinical practice?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, in some way, I feel like it shows up in a way that I'm more patient with my clients, and I'm not there to rush any process or rush through the pain of it, and I can sit with them in a place of that unknowing and in that overwhelmingness a little bit better because I've experienced that myself. Yeah, and I guess just more compassion. And I think with that too, it's also been this like delicate balance of like, okay, what are clients that I can support that feel okay, but which ones feel too close to home that I know that like maybe I might not be the best person because I am still early in my career, right? Like I have a responsibility around that too, like knowing what I can handle.
From a clinical lens.
Okay. Oh gosh. I feel like I'm on a test.
But also from a very personal space, right? Because grief is so individualistic oftentimes. But I think we're in a society that is very neoliberalistic and quite capitalistic as well, where you're forced to go back, or people will say, you should be over it already. Why are you still talking about your grief? It's been a year. And so do you find that it's a challenge? You mentioned that, it makes you more patient in supporting individuals, but our work as clinicians will also say, oh, you can't hold space forever. You have to get people in motion. Do you find, and this is where the decolonizing space lens comes in, where we have to balance, who are we serving? Are we serving society or are we serving our clients? So how do you create that balance where the clients probably need to only have this number of sessions, you have to support them to probably start re-engaging, but we're also quite empathetic in recognizing that re-engagement or moving too fast through the process of grief may not be the best option for them.
Yeah, okay. This is probably not going to come out very coherent.
That's okay.
We love authentic responses.
Well, I guess like what comes to mind is like, who are we to judge if someone is stuck in their grief, right? Like, yes, I'm there to connect them to feel like, to get them back to a sense of like, okay, I can do day-to-day things again and everything like that. But what does grief need? Like, grief needs witnessing, right? And it needs acknowledgement. It needs to feel seen and heard. And so I don't know if I have all the answers around how do I balance this, but I feel like it's this place of knowing that this grief matters to someone. And in a society like you named that like kind of really rushes us through the process, how can I maybe be the exception to that within the bounds of my role of like, I can see this and hold this with you, but I also can maybe hold the hope for you that like, yeah, you're going to go to work in 3 weeks and what can we do to help get you there? But like, know that this grief is still going to be with you and that's okay. Right. Like, maybe more of that, like, okay, container work and like, we have to sometimes be functioning and maybe that means we need to mask some of this, but like doesn't mean that we need to push grief under the rug. But how can we exist in both spaces?
Wonderful. I love that answer.
Okay. I appreciate any praise.
Oh, for sure.
I like the answer because what I heard is you're giving clients the autonomy to decide while also giving them the coping strategies to say, okay, we're going to be functional for society, but it doesn't mean that you have to dismiss whatever you're going through.
Yes.
So Alric was quite curious about how the collective pieces, how you got support, but you mentioned that you're in a biracial marriage and you lots of times what happens is when we're grieving, we internalize, we get into survival mode where we are trying to soothe ourselves and soothe whatever pain is there, that sometimes we neglect sometimes those around us. Not intentionally, might I declare. But you know, sometimes our partners or children can be the center of our lives, and then the grief process starts, and we're showing up a different way. How probably did this impact your marriage? How did this impact your interpersonal relationships? I'm going to say that trauma shows up in ways that we tend to isolate. This is the psychoeducation for the folks out there. So this is now me putting you on the spot, not as a clinician, but now showing up in all your roles.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I really feel like me and my husband went through it together, and I think there are many ways that it brought us closer. And he saw me at my worst and held me up in that, and I have many folks in my life too who have served that role. I think it's about finding your griefy people, and I think that speaking to that interpersonal piece too is there comes loss with that too, because I know I've lost some friends in this process.
And we'll come back right after this break. And we're right back, right in the middle of the ice. And so Sherani was sharing how
she lost friends
she
as well.
and Dale went through that, and the effect that had on friendships and the support that you had going through that. And so we were rudely interrupted by the break, and so we shall jump right back right there.
Yeah, you said, and I lost friends as well.
Yeah. So I did lose some friends in this process, and so I think while that comes with that own layer of grief too, I think it's just about finding the people that can support you in different ways that you need to be supported, right? Sometimes it's I've had to notice how okay, sometimes I need my griefy friends, the people that get it and can support me in it. Sometimes I need those friends that can give me that distraction. And distraction is okay sometimes, especially because if you're sitting in that overwhelming pool of grief, that's can be too much. But yeah, people can have different roles in your life, and they can have different strengths in how they can support you, right? And I think I can fall privy to this, but sometimes you can feel hurt and take it personally that they can't be there for you. But I think I've just tried to come to a place of acceptance and understanding too, that sometimes it's not in everyone's skill set to be that emotional support, right? And maybe that's why you have therapy sometimes too. So
And so Greg jumped in the comments, and he said he's just going back to that piece, and it ties into what you're saying. He says, how do you even choose the right therapist for that kind of conversation? How do you trust that this person will even actually understand if you don't have shared life experiences?
Wow.
Right? And that even ties into what you're mentioning just now, because some friends, some people who are in your lives, sometimes they don't understand the process itself. And so because they're not equipped for that, they're not ready for that journey with you into that, right? And so how do we then not personalize that, first of all? And when we're choosing that therapist, that support, how do we know when that's the right fit?
I'm going to get Sherani to respond, but I'm also going to state that when we're going through grief, we're not in the same state of mind.
Thank you.
It's not the same state of mind. We're just needing help. It's like a person who is hungry, and forgive all the vegans out there. If you're super, super hungry and you know you're going to die, you probably will grab the wrong things. Or if you're on a diet and you're going to, not necessarily the wrong thing, but whatever you need to fill
survive,
the gap in that moment.
To survive.
So when we talk about crisis response or trauma response, that is one of the elements that we have to think about. In that moment, people aren't necessarily looking for cultural competence. They're looking for somebody who is going to help them through whatever emotional disequilibrium is
Just bandaging the
happening with
wound.
them.
Yes.
And Carl Rogers spoke about this, spoke about empathy, which is what you mentioned in a nutshell with Dale and his role in your life, because you don't always have to have cultural competence, but if you have empathy, not self-erasure, because sometimes empathy can come
Shows
across
up
as
as-
self-erasure, where you're so engrossed in somebody else's pain that you yourself are suffering and you're forgetting how to take care of yourself, right? But when two humans show up in a space, that is the best kind of therapy that we can offer. It's not even about the clinical skills that we have. It's not about the modality that we're going to offer. Because I'll give you an example. I had an Asian client saw me last year. She had just found her dad's body. And she was in crisis.
Yeah.
I know nothing about her culture, but I know about grief.
Yeah.
And because I know about grief, I could create space for her. And she came to me through EAP, and I did 3 sessions with her to stabilize her. It was definitely not going to be enough, because that grief now brought up other grief. Like you, she was raised by her father as a single parent.
Yeah.
Her mother was trying to reconnect, but she found that she was now yearning for a mother that she didn't really want. So that cognitive dissonance was there. And so this client, I supported her, stabilized her, and told her about how to plan a funeral. Like, I became like, so, because she didn't know what to do.
Provided the resources.
When I tell you she didn't know what to do, and I didn't know what to do either, but I had to Google it. And I had to sit there with her to say, okay, here are some of the things that you could try. Here are some supports that you can reach out to. But most importantly, I stabilized her, and she came back. She came back, and we did like 3 to 6 months of work together where she could transition and function in society.
Wow.
And so I think we can try various options when we're feeling like we need the support, because sometimes good help or some help is better than no help, but bad help is better than no help as well. So we kind of have to strike that delicate balance. But that's what I have to share on that. I don't know if you have a different perspective, Sherani.
No, I think I agree with a lot of that too, because like, yeah, you just crave any sort of like support that like all those pieces of understanding your culture is maybe blended more for the longer term work, right? As you kind of integrate grief into your identity, or as you kind of continue to build this life of like grief alongside joy, right? Where you can hold both of those pieces. It's like needing someone then who can kind of understand those like cultural norms, cultural values that you have, because I think that's such a important piece when you want to have that integration.
Can we also talk about, we have time.
Okay.
Can we also bring in the fact that sometimes seeking somebody for cultural connection, sometimes culture is also quite harmful for some folks.
Yeah.
And so in trying to create their own individuality, they may not be looking for somebody who is culturally aligned.
Yes.
So they're looking for different factors. So each person has to decide what they're looking for in a therapist. And I think in my experience, folks who are new to therapy, they always don't know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
They're like, well, it's been sensationalized.
Yeah.
I think I should get a
You need the
therapist. So I don't know what I'm looking for. And so we get to create that delicate balance or guide them through that process so that they're able to understand that, okay, if I'm not a good fit, like I got a client last week, she had a therapist for 5 years. Wonderful. She said the therapist was wonderful, great therapist. But what happened is they got to a point where the situation that they were experiencing requires somebody who is aligned to her culturally. So we will know I'm sure, well, if people are guided, they will know. But this is me taking over your piece, and I'm going to pass it back to you to see if there's anything that you want to comment on and to share. I think we have about 2 minutes more that is left in our show for today. What do you want to get out there?
I think just to tie up from what you were saying is the key take-home message is like maybe find a therapist that like will honor your culture, and it doesn't need to be an aligned culture, but like incorporate culture into the therapy space, right? And I think that's such a huge part of like the decolonization work too, is that contributes to so much healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can today have been any more special?
I think navigating such a heavy topic and providing, you know, education plus resources that community is able to understand a bit more about this, because there are a lot of people who go through situations like this and they feel as if they have to go through it alone, right? Or they feel isolated, or they feel as if they're not able to navigate those cycles of grief, right? Or even pinpoint that that's what they're going through. And understanding that it's not a one size fit all, and it's not a one day and done journey. It's something that will continue with us for a long time, right? And I think this conversation was very timely today.
And interestingly enough, I like how you are putting it out there that people suffer in silence, because a lot of the trauma work that I do is with clients who are suffering through grief for many reasons. And we don't just grief. And today we talk about grief as it relates to death. But you will hear how Sherani brought in other things. She grieved friends who were alive. She's grieving culture. She's grieving food. She's grieving language. So grief is very layered, and it's not just associated with loss of what was, but it's also loss of what could have been. And I
or what never was.
Yes, or never was. But I wanted to bring into focus as well that our bodies also remember grief. And as somebody who is an orphan, an adult orphan, who grieves more my mother than the other parent, it's amazing how my body remembers. It's amazing how after 13 years, I still get sad around her birthday time, and I don't even know the date. And then my body I start getting more irritable, or I start getting more mopey, or I'm wondering what is wrong with me.
Like,
only to realize that, my mother's birthday is coming up, or close to anything that's celebratory, or my mind would have remembered or would have been associated with her Christmas time. You know, fruitcake. I don't bake fruitcake anymore because it feels so sad when I bake fruitcake, because it reminds me of my mother. And when my kids don't want to eat the fruitcake, I feel like they're rejecting my mother. And so that I want people to understand that when you're so far out after a loss, that is also the isolating piece, right? Because after a year or 2 years, people, it makes sense.
You should get on
just
with
happened.
it. Yeah.
But after 13 years, you can't tell people that, I'm still grieving, because they're like, really? So I want to also honor those folks who are silently still grieving, probably don't want to admit to it, because grief, as you said, the space isn't always held in the same way. So
and so I want to thank you for sharing the mic with us this morning, Sherani. You rocked. Thank you for coming, for vibing with us. As we go out this morning, as we close the show this morning, just want to remind folks that there is support that's available. Tap into community, tap into relationships, tap into the professionals that can help you. And, you do not have to go this alone. Okay, so coming right up, we have Miss Laura with the Latin Hour. Of course, G and Special K are back this Friday evening with the next 48. The weekend morning show is back on Saturday morning. Danny and G to rock that, and of course next week Sunday, Latoya and I will be back in the house for another episode of Let's Unpack That. But for right now, we're going to close with Wide Open Spaces, Dixie Chicks.